It seems like people can't agree on what they believe to be the point of the Overwatch League. Fanboys and haters aside, I've seen a lot of posts of people who just don't seem to understand how all of that works and why it exists in the first place. In today's video, I don't only want to explore what the point of the league is, but also show you that it is working. As a fan of the league who can't wait for them to finally open up a European distribution center for merchandise, it would be justified for you to assume that I'm going to argue much in favor of the league with that bias in mind. And you would be completely right. The league may not be perfect. It has problems, it's not everyone's cup of tea, and I'm not here trying to say that you're a tool if you're not watching it. Point being, rumors says that not everything is rosy in the league, especially for the players as well as those who want to be acquired by a team, but ultimately they're just that, rumors. Once we have some concrete evidence or background info, we can talk about what is going on behind the scenes, but for today I just want to talk about the things that we can see and assess by watching the league and following its development on social media. And to address the elephant in the room, let's talk about the constant barrage of assumptions that the league is failing. We have reason to assume that this is absolute nonsense, and it does not even take a whole lot of digging to see why. I've read a post on Reddit a while ago claiming that someone responsible for marketing the league said that they'd be satisfied with achieving over 40k views on a regular. Now, we don't know if that relates to Twitch alone or if that is considering all the streams that feature the Overwatch League matches. As far as I know, the league is also being broadcast on MLG, as well as some Korean livestream, and I think I heard of a Chinese one as well. While all of that sounds a lot like he said, she said, does it even matter? It doesn't, and here's why. A project as massive as the Overwatch League cannot possibly work without the help of sponsors. And while they did manage to bring some on board in the name of Omen by HP, Toyota, and Intel, the very fact that they added T-Mobile as well as Sour Patch Kids to just recently shows that they are either very convincing or very successful. To address the quote-unquote issue of lower viewership, let's put aside the fact that, for one, as I already said, Twitch is not the only platform to broadcast the league, but reality is also that if you look at any sport with live broadcasts, or any league for that matter, none of them uphold their launch numbers throughout their entire first season. Most people are obviously very interested in the first day as it is a new project, so needless to say that this would see some pretty ridiculous numbers. But when it comes to viewership, there's absolutely no reason to treat it as anything else than, well, traditional sport. Depending on which matches are being broadcast, more or less interest is being generated. More people are keen to watch games between the juggernauts of the league rather than the small fry trying to beef it up for the bottom 5. Not to mention that time slot wise, a lot of the matches are being broadcast at a time that favors literally no one but the US, which I guess should be expected given that the sponsors are largely, if not entirely, located in the US, as well as the fact that most teams are representing cities in the States. A lot of criticism is also fired directly at the fact that most of the teams are only representing cities in the US, and that this alone would show the lack of confidence that brands have in this project. And that is only realistic. We shouldn't forget that this is the first time a league was built from the ground up in such a scale, for better or for worse, with more monetary investment and less organic growth. If you have nothing to go by that would prove your point of this project being a success, there's little reason for investors to dump money into it, and that's what the first season is for, to show that it can work. Revenue generated from ticket sales and merchandise, exposure granted through logos and mentions relative to total view numbers, etc. All these things are going to be used to convince more cities, more investors, and more sponsors to join the club later down the line. In all honesty, I find it impressive that they got as many of those on board for the first one as they do, and we're seeing more brands warm up to the idea with not only general Overwatch League investments, but also individual team sponsorships. Now, for all you know, I could be talking straight out of my ass, and you'd be right to be skeptical. After all, I really don't have any numbers to back this up. Brand deals are also often negotiated far in advance, so God knows what's the trigger that caused T-Mobile and Sour Patch Kids to only appear just now. But ultimately, my evidence is just as anecdotal as yours, and that shows how little faith you can put in either of those statements. Is the league failing? Is it a success? I have as little evidence proving my point as you. So mindlessly spouting that it's dead honestly just makes you look very stupid. If you're convincing enough, you can make most people believe that you know what you're talking about. What we should talk about more than the monetary success or failure of the league is why it exists in the first place. And that is honestly the more interesting part anyway, because it's not solely based on anecdotal evidence. It's more about personal bias, and God knows that I got that in abundance. Some people claim that the league is about the highest level of play, and that by having stomps of any sort happen, happened, they failed to deliver on a good watching experience. And that is kinda the twist, because those skill disparities are part of what makes the league a better watching experience. Let me explain. In any successful mainstream sport, the focus lies not in raw mechanical skill alone, because if that's the only thing that people cared about, then everyone would be cheering for the team that has the most star players on the team thanks to a massive monetary investment. It is easy to root for the team that's always winning anyway, but it's more difficult to be the fan of a team that is underperforming. But that, my friends, is what the league is about. It's not about the games that they play and the performance that they deliver, it's about the stories. Of course, the league can be about whatever you want it to be about. I mean, if you only care for the highest level of play and you always tune in when the top teams are playing, then there's your reason to watch the league. But in a much broader sense, it's about the stories, and the league has already proven to deliver exactly on that, namely with the Shanghai Diamonds. I mean Dragons. You see, the Shanghai Dragons were widely considered one of, if not the worst team in the league, for reasons that are very apparent once you dig a bit deeper into who the hell is even on that team. And people like me and others on Discord who join me watching have made fun of them for their absolutely terrible performance in the first couple of matches. They were widely considered to be a joke. That was until they played against opponents along the lines of Seoul Dynasty. Needless to say that they got stunned, but they weren't beaten by as much of a huge margin as people expected. The Dragons were fighting tooth and nail to the bitter end. It's gotten as far as having people in the arena cheer for the Dragons, and I'm not just talking about a few guys who started shouting memes. I'm talking about a unified chorus of people all cheering on the Dragons together, and it seemed like they were taking that energy from the crowd and put up an amazing fight against Seoul Dynasty. And that, my friends, is the sheer power of the underdog story. Many of us can relate to underdogs because we like to believe that we too can overcome overwhelming odds when they can do it. We almost see them as an extension of ourselves and our own chances, and that's why we want them to win against an opponent that, very obviously, is way stronger. The Shanghai Dragons managed to win a lot of people's allegiance not by a stellar mechanical performance, but solely because of the stories that they were telling. The fact that they did not give up in the face of an opponent that would undeniably come out on top, rising to the occasion and showing people that there's more to them than the joke that many saw them to be. And even with the Dragons being at the bottom of the scoreboard with 0-6 at the time of scripting this video, they have sold more merchandise than any other team, beating not only general Overwatch League merch, but also selling more jerseys than other teams sold t-shirts, which given the price difference is very impressive. And the Shanghai Dragons are not the only team to create storylines. Others have also been able of huge upsets against teams that honestly should have beaten them by a long shot. We're getting not only the players' performance, but also a glimpse of their personalities as teams and individuals. The league shows us interviews and pre-recorded background stories, and some teams even come up with funny and interesting little skits that they perform while entering the arena. The league is not only about coming out on top of the leaderboard, but it's also about winning over the fans, and the only way you can do that is by convincing with more than just your gameplay. Dallas Fuel, despite the fact that they are currently 1-5, which I hope to God is a better score by the time this video goes live, have not lost the faith of many of their fans, and that's because they are convincing and likable personalities. And honestly, it is my belief that once you watch the league with all of that in mind and having a genuine interest in these things, you will appreciate it on a much different level. People are not just cheering for the teams that represent their cities, or hell, even those that are just the strongest on paper. They also cheer for teams because of their personalities and the stories that unfold as the league continues. Which, granted, all sounds a bit cheesy, but it is something that has worked in traditional sport for years and will continue to work in esports as well. And this is me done for the day, so I share my passion about the Overwatch League with all of you who are willing to listen. What about that? Leave a comment down below, tell me why you do or don't watch the league. Let's gather some opinions to see if anyone feels similarly or completely differently from what I've discussed today. But until then, thank you everybody so much for watching. Don't forget to drop me a like on your way out if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you want to see more, and I hope to see you all next time.